All right, hello everybody, and welcome to another Insights Now's webinar series. Today I'm taking one more step in the last two sequences that I had. So those were on emotions. If you're curious, jump back a couple of weeks and follow step one and step two on understanding how to get more emotional in research. Today I'm going to tie in a few more pieces on that and go from emotions then to choices people make. So today we're going to talk about 3 ways to boost consumer choice. And we're going to be focusing a little bit more on within research projects. How do you do that? How do you ensure that the choice information that you collect from research is going to be much more accurate and relevant to what types of choices people are actually making in real life? So research contexts are always different and challenging, but there's a few tricks that you can do to improve that particular choice. All right, so as always, jump in with questions. If I see a question that I can address while we're going through the session, I'll try and pop it in right there. At the end, if you have any final questions as we get through, I'll address those at the very end of the webinar as well. All right, so let's talk about what affects our choices. When we think about choices, one of the things we look at is how our behavioral responses, i.e. our choices, are being triggered. So if we think about this from a behavioral standpoint, some of the things that affect our choices are who we are as people. That changes real slow in life. So who we are, it's our demographics, it's also our time slots, our personality, elements of who we are as people. It's the contexts that we are in. So what the setting is, what the occasion is, what mood we're in, all of those things are affect what type of choice we're likely to make. What we see and what we appraise. Just because it's around us doesn't mean we recognize it, and sometimes even if it's there, it's only maybe a subconscious recognition. But what's in our environment and what we see and what we appraise affects what we choose. And then finally, the actual choices that we are making. Our past choices also affect our future choices. Now, in research, what can you control in research looking at that same setting? So you can control the people you talk with. Who you're talking to changes the types of choices that and choice information that you're going to get at the end of the day. You talk with different people, you're going to get a different perception of what that market's going to do. The context that you set or create for people, and if you set a really specific context, you're going to get a different set of choices. If you set a much more broad context, you may get a different set of choices. So the context you set changes it. The activity you're giving them to do, so the type of choice exercise you actually give them to do is going to affect the type of information you get out of it and what type of thought they put into making those particular decisions, if any at all. And then finally, the type of choice you have them make. What are you asking them to actually choose between? Are you asking them to make a shopping decision? Are you making a purchase decision? Are you making a preference decision? Are you making an evaluative choice? What are the types of things that you're actually having them do? So the choices that we most care about in research often come back to purchase behavior. Like online purchase behavior may be very different from in-store purchase behavior. So understanding the context in which you ask people about their purchase behavior is going to change how people tell you what choices they would make. And then any type of in context or situational use. So I may be in my kitchen, I'm not making a purchase behavior, but I am making a use behavior of different things that I have available to me. So we need to understand in research, what choices are you actually caring about making, and make sure that you focus people in on those particular choices as you go through. And then the question is then within the research, what choice exercise will you use? Check all that apply is a choice exercise. Picking a winner or ranking products, ranking is an exercise, uses a different part of the brain. Implicit reactions, so really quick, fast reactions, those are different types of choice exercises, are driven by different choice exercises that you make. Trade-offs, forced choice, right? Playing the would you rather game, essentially, for people and asking them to make a forced choice between situations. And then any type of conjoint, max diff, tournament approach where you're having people make a series of choices or making maybe choices in combinations in some way, shape, or form. All right, so that's a big, quick understanding of the types of background. What is our situation that we're in? What type of research challenges do we have? What type of exercises are we going to use? So to make good decisions around that information, I'm going to give you 3 focused areas today, and we'll talk about how these have come alive in research. So 3 ways to boost choice during consumer choice exercises. Number 1, make sure you're making it relevant to people. Number 2, make sure that you are thinking through the emotional reactions that people have. So make sure you are getting them to an emotional decision. And then finally, make sure that you've expressed and they understand what types of rewards they're going to get out. So make it relevant, make it emotional, and make it rewarding. Now, choice, by definition, is the purest form of an emotional response. And I do still talk with people who have a little bit of a split view. They kind of bucket emotional decisions separate from rational decisions. I want to break that a little bit in this setting. And as we talk through today, while I'm going to be talking about emotions specifically, I want you to know also that all decisions we make, all choices we make are emotional. You may put more rational thinking or heuristics into one type of decision than another. One might be more implicit, maybe more fast, maybe more based on your habits and emotions in the moment. However, all decisions you make are emotional. All right, so let's take a look at that. Making something relevant. When we go back to the basic science of understanding how to put context or the value of context, really choice occurs when you are appraising some object and you have an emotional response, and then you make a decision, a choice of some sort. Now, that choice always occurs in some sort of context. And if you don't have a relevant context for people, then the choices that are being made are not going to be necessarily realistic, or you're not going to know why they're making those choices. You're not going to know what context they're setting. So you need to be proactive and make sure that you set that context for them. Now, the context is 2 pieces. You've got your external context, which is your setting, situation, as well as then the internal state of affect. So that would be something like your mood and how you're feeling at that time. So you can talk about both of those elements as a way to set the stage for when people make an appraisal and have that emotional response in which they make a choice. All right, now, in addition to the context itself, we have all of the motivators, all of the behavioral drivers that come into our appraisal process as well. And if you want to learn a little bit more about this, you can go to the emotions sessions that we had a couple of weeks ago. But it's the stimulus itself, right? What's the experience, the perceptions, what kind of outcomes? It's your concerns, the goals you have, what you believe you ought to be doing or ought not to be doing, makes a difference in how you appraise the particular product you're looking at, and then your expectations, what's been primed, what's your memories, all of those cues drive your appraisal process. So being able to make something relevant is all about making sure that you've got the context and that those appraisal drivers really thought through in research, and you set people up for success by making sure you get the context right at the beginning. All right. Next, we specifically want to be able to make it emotional for people. And one of the things that we see often in emotions work is too narrow of a focus. So often what's happening is we're not necessarily thinking about all the ways we project our emotions. We're often getting really, really centered on just whatever the choice that we're actually asking people to make. And so most of the time that's a product-oriented choice or an attribute-oriented choice. That means that you've focused people in very, very narrowly, projecting their emotions on a product. However, we know that choices are often not that narrow. So in surveys, what I would encourage people to do is think about this little mantra of people, product, and experience. You can project emotions on the product on the experience of using that product and on the people that you may experience that product with or for. So what we want to be able to do when we're thinking through emotionals, projections, and choice exercises is to think, have I really covered have I set people up for success, or have I narrowed down their emotional response to appraising something that I'm giving them to such a narrow range that it's not necessarily realistic anymore? Right. Now, another element that helps you understand emotions is to look at what we call the eliciting conditions, essentially the definition of how an emotion comes about. So going through a list, this is my particular favorite, which is from Desmond, and you look at a key emotion, but specifically you're looking at the eliciting conditions here. And what you're looking for is just reading through those to say, okay, is this emotion relevant in this, and what is the eliciting, how does that emotion come about? Do I need a projection for that emotion that comes from maybe my hopes, i.e. I've set somebody up to have certain hopes, or maybe I've set somebody up to have certain fears that my product is supposed to be alleviating. So how are those eliciting conditions coming about to drive those emotions forward? So going through a list like this as you're designing your research is also very helpful in opening your eyes to say, oh yeah, I forgot about that element. Right. And the final piece is making it rewarding. So the question here is really, what are the drivers of the behavior? And when we look at our emotions insights wheel, the background of that are 4 key categories: functional, sensory, social, and psychological. And what we want to be able to do when we're thinking through choice exercises is, have we covered all the spaces? Do we have all the drivers identified? Do we understand why those choices are being made? And can we help understand that essentially reason why? To help bring this to life, I've got a couple examples. One would be, let's say I'm choosing between prune juice and orange juice, right? Prune juice may very well be something that I have very functional, I view as a very functional need. I have digestive issues. Prune juice is going to help with my digestive issues. It's a very functional component piece. Whereas maybe orange juice might be, oh, the enjoyment of this wonderfully tasty, maybe it's a sweetened orange juice that has a lot of joy, sensorial joy, or maybe I really enjoy the chewiness of pulp. That could be a driver. Whereas all orange juice could also be a very social piece, right? I don't know that I've spent too much time talking with people other than my grandma about prune juice. So orange juice, though, much more social environment. All right, another example might be M&Ms and Pop Rocks. M&Ms might, maybe for me, M&Ms is all about that sensory experience of the hard shell with a melted chocolate experience, so that dichotomy of crisp and melt. Whereas maybe Pop Rocks is being driven more by the psychological surprise I get when the explosions are happening in my mouth, or maybe coming from the social aspect of me giving it to somebody else and watching their face light up when we see the popping and watch the expressions as that goes through. So understanding what's actually driving choice behavior is really, really important part of the entire process of understanding the choice exercises. And you could easily make arguments that, for instance, Pop Rocks is sensory, Pop Rocks is functional. You could put them into all those quadrants, and that's perfectly really what I'm trying to get at, which is, if you don't think about all the different spaces, you often will miss elements that are driving why that product is so rewarding for people. So you've got to be able to get that good expression out. All right, let's take a couple of case study examples to bring this to life a little bit more. We're going to talk about a new concept developed for dog food, as well as new packaging for Tofurkey. So the first one we're going to go into is dog food. And in this particular piece of research, we were building, this is actually a few years back, before the clean label movement was really taken off, before refrigerated dog foods really were on the market at all. We're looking at opportunities to bring dry dog food into a whole new worldview. So building out a concept for something that was real meat, real vegetables, real food. So this concept was, introducing the new Simply the Best dog food, brand we made up, by the way, for this particular piece of research. So if somebody actually has that trademarked, I don't think it is, but apologies there. This was research on research for this particular example. So just to call that out. But it's a dry dog food made from high quality ingredients. It's the thoughtful preparation piece, no artificial colors, real ingredients, and then selecting cuts of meats and vegetables and whole grains, right? So the whole point of this particular concept was to put people into an understanding of what the problem state was, right? So putting that picture on it. So the question is, how with in this research, how do we make it relevant? How do we make it emotional? How to make it rewarding? Now, what we wanted to do with this research was figure out, in the list of green there, you see really a large list of possible types of ingredients that could go into it, and possible types of flavors. What we were hoping to do with this research is do a choice series of exercises that could narrow that down to figure out what would people, given this particular context, really want to see in a baked dog food. All right, so in the research, you want to make it relevant first. So using storytelling to set the context for people was one way that this came about as creating relevance for people. So this is coming back and it's setting that context, and notice that there's that emotional pull within this. So what kind of food does your dog really want? Right, this is this person, the owner's question that began her search. Really, I wanted to answer and understand all of these pieces, right? The ingredients were natural, real meat, real vegetables, real food. This type of setting then helps make it relevant for people, and making sure that we're talking to people who value the real meat, real vegetables, real food mindset for their pets. All right, the second piece is making it emotional. So the question is, what's the projection, right? Are we looking at just the food? Now we're going to do a choice exercise that's just on the flavors, just on the ingredient elements. But how do we ensure that we get really good projection, right? How do dog food choices make you feel? What emotions is this concept going to need to elicit in order to motivate choice? Do we have it set up correctly? Have we created the right hope? Have we created the right intrigue? Have we created a sense of pride in setting this up? So have we addressed the product? Have we addressed the experience? Have we addressed the people? Making sure that we put that together, and you can see that in the concept that comes to life. And then the next piece is making it rewarding. So what are all the behavioral drivers, right? It could be the brand, the claims, the motivations. It could be the meats, right? The different types of real meats, the different types of real vegetables. So thinking through all of the functional, the sensory, the social, the psychological elements here, and making sure that we've got all of the behavior drivers incorporated in this as well. All right, so the research approach that we used for this was called is a playoff design. It's a tournament design. And in a tournament design, we want to be able to compare and contrast and make relevant context for people that they can make choices within. So it starts out with priming. We have people tell stories. So we set the context with what the challenge is. We have them story tell about their own pet, right? We're getting that into a real context. When do you feed your pet? How do you feed your pet? Then we show the concept, have them have an assessment of that. Now they're, again, contextualized. And then we look at the emotional triggers. What does that concept do for people? How does it set them up emotionally? Then we went into a flavor playoff. This is where we did a max diff of the different types of meats, the different types of vegetable combinations that could come up in this particular design. So there was lots and lots of combinations. So you're using a filtering approach. Tournament lets you see the ability. We had like 50 different combinations that we filtered down in this study. And then you have the ranking. So you have the max diff, which is a choice exercise, winners and losers in sets. Then you do a ranking of the winners, all the things that win, you find out what's their rank order, and then do scaled assessment. What's the purchase interest, the uniqueness, the fit to the brand for that particular flavor combination. And all of those things go together to come up with a overall index, which lets us identify which is the most likely flavors to drive choice. Then after that, we had people select their competitive set of products. So this is going back and looking at making it relevant by using a realistic consideration set. So I've got the focus on the concept and the flavors there, but now I need to put it into a realistic scenario. So have them go through and pick the specific types of dog foods that they're using today, as well as ones that they may consider using or have considered in the past. So get a realistic consideration set for them. Then take the winners from the concept and put that into that new consideration set and do now a second tournament where we do that same set of exercises. Here's 3 different dog foods. Which one would you be most likely to pick, least likely to pick? And then the ones that they were all most likely to pick, rank those. So we have a number 1 overall, and then do scaled assessments. Okay, now that you've, for those, what's your purchase interest, uniqueness, and brand fit? Now, I mentioned the tournament index a little before. How that works, it's an aggregate value. So what you're doing is you're creating an 100 based index based on the max diff exercise, based on the ranking, based on purchase intent, uniqueness, brand fit. You're aggregating that together and coming up with an overall average index. Anything above 100 is over indexing, anything below 100 is under indexing. And then we do statistical analysis, and then you can see what things are statistically greater than 100. That's your top tier. Those are the most valuable items, most likely to be chosen. Mid-tier and bottom tier. Mid-tier is, not statistically different from 100, and then bottom is below. And obviously, as you're going through this, you're really wanting to see what are the things that are on the top. So when we come out of that second tournament where we have the top scoring flavors, in this case, there was 5 flavors that were in that top scoring set. We then pair those or put those into those realistic choice exercises with the types of products that are being chosen. And you can see now realistically where they're going to fall and how likely of a chance do they have of getting chosen compared to the products that are already on the market. So while people were pretty excited about the new concept, when you put them into those relevant contextual situations, you got to see a little bit more realistic choices that people had. So what we did see in this particular research was we saw that this whole venison beef lamb combination really ended up being one of the key combinations that drove people to say, yeah, that's the kind of thing I would want with for my particular dog. Now, interestingly enough, we also got some other really interesting insights out of this, because one of the things that you can see is these top 2 are over-indexed even more so than the next set of products in which the example, Simply the Best brand, was listed. What was unique about the top 2 products, you can then go back and say, how are they positioned differently? What's unique about those 2 that made them stand out? And one of the things that you could see about them is those 2 products were really putting a lot more focus on complete nutrition rather than just real ingredients. And so this then opens up that opportunity to say, okay, if I want to drive even more choice with Simply the Best, maybe I need to add a little bit more context or a little bit more story around providing those real ingredients and everything, providing complete nutrition, because that's what the top scoring items also had available within their description. All right, so let's then go back into taking a look at another case study. Let's look at Tofurky deli slices. In this particular situation, Tofurky was looking at possibilities of changing a package. So the product they have now is bag in a box, right? You've got the recyclable cardboard. It's positioned in the plant-based meat section of the retail stores. And they were curious about going into other sections of the store and how a different package may either improve choice within the plant-based section, or what if they could use a different package and get into the section where the animal meats are also there. So could you have a combined category with plant and animal meats? What would change, and would the package make a difference in those particular situations? So what we did with this study is we had a max diff up front. What are the products you buy today within this space? And then we showed concepts, got traditional metrics on each of the package types. We did an implicit explicit test. And then on the back end, another concept oriented max diff where we took the same products that were in the first one, put them in the last one. And we added in the new package, right? So we could see how people's choices would shift based on the packages that they were evaluating. All right, so what really made this unique was the study on relevance. So we had two cells in this study. One cell, all of the max diff exercises were just around plant-based meat alternatives. So all of the products that they were choosing from would be as if they were shelved in the plant-based section. And we had them primed to think about going to the plant-based section of their grocery store and picking deli meats from that plant-based section. The second cell was a combined cell where we had real meat products along with the plant-based meat products, and we had them all combined together, and we had them thinking about going into a retail environment where they were seeing all the different types of deli meats, including plant-based meats and animal-based meats, all at the same time. So those two contexts, of course, change people's mindset, right? It's changing the setting and the relevance for people. Now, when we do a max diff up front and a max diff at the end, when we look at how much people's choices change, one of the metrics that we get is called lift. And this tells us what percentage of additional choice is a particular product going to get. In this case, we were looking at the lift that you get that's different from the control product, right? We already know what the control product scores. So for instance, if we look at vertical bag on the top there, we know that the vertical bag increases choice by 26% when it's shown within the context of plant-based products. And the vertical bag increases choice by 9% when it's in that combined animal and plant-based cell. So that vertical bag, so strong lift to capture additional shoppers. So if we're Tofurky, we can look at this and go, wow, I can get additional sales. I can get more choice if I change from my cardboard packaging to something that has a little bit more visibility of the particular meat in this vertical bag space. Now, interestingly enough, the soft tray, that's the film on top, soft tray on bottom, you can see the weave of the meats. The soft tray actually showed the 36% lift in the plant-based and 40% lift in the animal. So this one, independent of where it's shelved in the retail environment, is driving additional choice. It's going to do good in both locations. And the plastic tub shows more lift in the combined section. So interestingly enough, you can see how choice dramatically changes based on the context you put people in. Right, so that's relevance, right? Relevance makes a huge difference. Where you put it in the store changes how you perceive it. Now, emotionally, there's some drivers behind why these choices are happening. And a lot of this has to do with intrigue. So if you look at the blue columns, those are the when it's in the plant-based section. In the plant-based section, if you go to that section of the store, you don't see soft trays today. You don't see plastic tubs today. So the fact that you see those in that section is very intriguing. It's a little disruptive. And what we're seeing is increased emotional intrigue when that type of a container shows up in a section where you don't typically see that container. Whereas in the deli meat section, those containers are already there. So there's really not very much difference in the emotional intrigue that people have when they're seeing those same containers in the deli meat section, right? So it's already there. Now, we can also look at the rewards, right? So one of the rewards that this brand needs to attain is respecting the planet. And one of the concerns of somebody like Tofurky, who currently is in a recyclable cardboard container, to move into a plastic container, one of the concerns is that going to become a problem for consumers? Is that reward going to go away or be increased? And one of the things we do see is that the cardboard container, the control product on the left there, when it's in the plant-based section, people believe that container is respecting the planet, right? Gets a very high score. Whereas that same product, when you're in the deli meat section, has a lower score. In fact, the soft tray has a higher score for respecting the planet. And if you dig deeper into the reasons behind this, it's about wastefulness, right? It's not about recyclability. In this particular case, the cardboard with additional packaging is viewed as too much packaging, rather than compared to the soft tray, which feels like and looks like very minimalistic packaging. So you get this dichotomy of respecting the planet based on not necessarily what the material is, but how much material is there. So these types of elements, thinking about choice and understanding why those choices are coming by looking at the relevance, looking at the emotions, looking at the rewards people get, really do improve your ability to understand choice-based exercises and get the best type of information possible. So when you're doing choice-based exercises, 3 ways you can boost consumer choice. Number 1, make it relevant. Set the right context, priming, putting people in relevant moments in their life, getting them focused correctly on the specific situation, right? When we were looking at dog food, it was all about putting people in the moment when they were feeding their particular dog dry dog food. And we wanted in the feeding moment rather than the shopping moment. For tofurkey, it was all about the shopping moment. What aisle of the store are you in when you're making this decision? So set the context, prime people correctly. Secondly, making it emotional. Create the right eliciting conditions so that those emotions can be expressed. Don't get so narrow that you're only focused on the product. Make sure that they're thinking broadly about their experience with that particular product or the people that are connected to that product, so that you have the full understanding of the emotional drivers behind the choice. So for the dog food, it was making sure they were thinking about their pet, thinking about what their pet might want, and getting past just the, how the product's made. For tofurkey, it was thinking about all of the environmental elements, all of the other emotions that they may be feeling when they are thinking about why they're making that particular decision as well. And then finally, make it rewarding, right? Make sure that you're communicating the rewards and make sure you're expressing those rewards completely by thinking through all 4 quadrants. What are the functional rewards? What are the sensorial, perceptual rewards, psychological rewards, social rewards? Make sure that those are in full communication throughout your research. And if you're trying to figure out the whys, make sure you're selecting the right list to dig deeper into in order to understand the details. All right, so that is our session for today. Hopefully those 3 tips get you a little bit more information. So if you have any other questions, go ahead and throw additional questions in. I was able to grab a couple of questions about the dog food as we went through there, so those are already held. So if you have anything else though, I would love to be able to answer any questions. All right, we got one on the tournament. Let's see. Oh, the index for the tournament. Correct. So how flexible is it? Do you always have to use purchase intent and brand fit? No, you can use any critical pieces of information when you're doing choice exercises. One of the things I love to see in research, especially choice-based research, is to use techniques that use all the ways the brain makes decisions and organizes thought. So choice, right? A versus B type decisions, ranking, how you sort and order things, and then scale-based information. How do you rate different elements and what you believe is true or not true about those elements? So in the tournament, as an example, you have the max diff, which is your choice A versus B choices. You've got a ranking exercise of all the winners. You've got then different types of scaled responses. In this particular case, we were curious about purchase intent, brand fit, and uniqueness. We wanted something that had high fit to brand, high uniqueness, as well as high purchase interest. So we put those three metrics into the tournament. Maybe your choice, maybe you want frequency in there. Maybe you don't care about uniqueness at all, and you just want to make sure that it's purchasable and highly frequent. That's okay too. You can incorporate into a design like that any type of metric that you would use to make a decision. All right, I think that answers all those questions. Fantastic. All right, well, let's also talk about what's coming up next. Coming up next, we are going to be hitting the Natural Products Expo West. That happens the week, oh goodness, the week of March 7th. And so after that expo, we're going to be coming back with some trend spotting that we did at the expo. It's a wonderful, huge expo happening down in California this year, and we'll be bringing some insights back. So if you can attend, great. Connect with us, look us up, we'll have a booth there. If you cannot attend, pop into the March 17th webinar and we will get you some highlights from that particular expo. All right, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy.